I want to welcome everybody to the Daily Cheat Sheet and thank everybody for all the downloads, the love, everything that goes with it. Going on right now is Washington, D.C., District of Columbia. Trump basically saying, I plan on taking it over. I think it's an extremely amazing move. I just think it's about time. And something has to be done. I'll read the exact post. I love when he ends it with a certain word. Washington, D.C. will be liberated today. Crime, savagery, filth, and scum will disappear. I will make our capital city great again. The days of ruthless killing or hurting innocent people are over. I quickly fixed the border, 0 illegals in the last 3 months. D.C. is next. And this is my favorite way he ends his truths sometimes. Thank you for your attention to this matter, President DJT. But it's just like, thank you for your attention to this matter, man. It's basically like no arguments are going to come back. He's ending it right there.
It's great. DC's been a cesspool for a long time, not just politically, but actual physically on the streets. The crime is out of control. The mayor is as woke as they come. She's actually trying to play a little bit nice because she needs the federal funding. But the fact that the Capitol, which is a huge tourist attraction for our country, is so lawless that staffers, people that work in Washington are getting beat up and mugged and shot on a daily basis. Something needs to be done, and I'm glad the president's doing something about it.
Listen, I think that's extremely well said. And Golan, people often forget this isn't a new thing. Okay, this is the same city that voted a crackhead in at least 2 to 3 times. And even after he was right, it's exactly right. But that's my point, is how easily people forget. And I'm glad you brought up his name because that's where I was going, Golan. But Marion Barry was a crackhead, got arrested, went to prison, and became mayor again.
Again, can you imagine that this is your thought process, your decision-making process? I think when you have that kind of voting prowess, maybe you don't deserve the right to vote. I know that I'm not supposed to say such things. We're all supposed to have the right to vote. I personally think there should be some sort of litmus test for voting and for having kids. That's just my personal opinion. Not everyone has to agree with me. If I have to pass a test in order to drive a car, how do you let me have the keys to a human being or to electing the most powerful person in the world? That aside, DC is not a state. It never was. And as far as I'm concerned, unless the Democrats get into office and try to make it one, it shouldn't be. It exists because the founders wanted the capital, specifically the capital, to be neutral ground, right? Not under the thumb of some governor, not under some partisan hack, which means the federal government has the right and the duty to step in when the place goes to hell. And the place, as men pointed out, purely hell. You don't get states' rights without being a state, as far as I'm concerned. And I think that that's exactly what he's trying to talk about here when he says there's an accountability, and it's time for me, as the head of the federal government, to do something about it. I don't think that should be controversial. I don't think it should be weird. And I'm tired of the fact that people are trying to bring up the fact there should be a state, because all that is governmental overreach anyway. So I think we have to go back to what it was meant to be from the inception of the country and allow the federal government to clean up its mess.
And before the Democrats all get, all riled up about this thing, it goes back to cause and effect. Had there not been out of control crime in Washington, Trump would not be talking about taking control of Washington.
That's right.
Democrat-run city mayor, whatever her name is, has done a terrible job, and it's been that way forever. As you said, with Marion Barry and the other leaders of Washington, D.C. forever have neglected that city, and it's been a crime-ridden hellhole forever. So that's the cause. Here's the effect.
Just real quick, before we move on from it, don't forget, D.C. hasn't been run as a local government for the entirety of its existence. That only started 3 years before I was born. 1973, Congress passed what's called the Home Rule Act, which was essentially when the federal government, and this is literally the way it's written into law, it loaned D.C. the privilege to run its own local government. That was a loan. It was a privilege, but not a right, okay, because it isn't a state. And privileges can be revoked. If I give my daughter the right to play with the toy, you break the toy, I'm going to take the toy back. And they broke the toy so many times that it's ridiculous. You elected a crackhead twice after you knew he was a crackhead. Time for me to take the toy back.
And by the way, her name is Bowser from Shanana. There was a Bowser.
That's
but
right.
man, again, I want to bring up a perfect example of branding by the left that's been remarkable, right? And this is why Trump is also incredible at branding, right? When he named the big beautiful bill, he forced everybody to say on TV the big, beautiful bill, regardless if you hated it. He made you say it. But I want to go to this thing of sanctuary city. It's because it's everything. It's the exact opposite. Everything they name, Mend, from Planned Parenthood to every organization, is the opposite. It's not a
The
sanctuary
Inflation
city.
Reduction Act.
Right,
That was a
right,
great one.
right. But Mend, you say sanctuary city, assume future hellhole.
Yeah, I mean the name sanctuary sounds very safe. It's a sanctuary, but actually what they're doing is it's a sanctuary for criminals, and it's a sanctuary for people that commit crimes and don't get prosecuted, or there's a revolving door of justice where the DAs just decline to prosecute people. As I mentioned the other day, Washington, D.C. has a huge, super high number of homicides every year, lots of killings. If you're caught with an illegal handgun in Washington, D.C., your conviction rate, the percentage of people that actually go to jail for that is 2%. So, they just don't prosecute people for actual crimes, and the ones that are committing crimes keep on getting back out. And that's the sanctuary. It's not sanctuary for your kids. It's not a sanctuary for the elderly. It's not a sanctuary for the weak, the infirm, anything like that. No, these are sanctuary cities for criminals. And you look at every one of these sanctuary cities, from Los Angeles to Boston to Chicago to New York, crime is off the charts. You look at other cities that are not sanctuary cities. Look at Miami. Crime is way down. It's safe.
By the way, this is a trick that they use all the time, as you pointed out, Judah, whether it's reproductive justice and common sense gun reform and equity instead of equality and comprehensive immigration reform and bail reform and all the way down the line, all the way to my favorite one, which is gender affirmation. We don't have to go down all of those rabbit holes. But I think, as we talked about on the previous show, this sanctuary city alone, even if we put aside everything the men said, which is correct, just remember that since we are counting illegals in the census, that means any place that says we are going to enforce the law is punished. And any place that is a sanctuary city has free reign to pack themselves with as many illegals as possible and get more money and more rights. It's ridiculous.
And more representation in Congress.
More representation, more numbers, et cetera. It's one of those phrases that sounds warm and fuzzy. So you realize it's just political camouflage. That means the federal law stops here. These branding tricks are things that people don't pay attention to because they read the headline, but they don't read the rest of the article. And once they read the headline, they go, well, who doesn't want the inflation to be reduced? Who doesn't want gender to be affirmed? Who doesn't want there to be a city where everyone's safe? All of these things are just tricks. But essentially, as men point out, this is affirmation for criminals, especially those here illegally, while law-abiding citizens get left holding the bag. That's all that is.
I want to take this a step further, though, because men brought up a really good number, which is extremely important, which is the 2%, right? Now, when you look at what they did with people from the Trump administration, while I can't stand Steve Bannon, I don't believe he deserved to go to prison. It seems like everybody that got prosecuted within the Trump orbit, men, it was way higher than 2%. And I think something really needs to be done about the District of Columbia, because we know that the judges there are 99% liberal. So I would not have any issues if there was a complete federal takeover of the District of Columbia. You cannot have a court system like that where 99% of your judges are making laws, enacting laws, breaking laws, doing everything, and let that ride. You just cannot allow that to continue. Next, go to New York. I don't care what you have to do. There needs to be a correction with our judges.
Yeah, we need a Julie or a Mandy Gunasekara, someone to weigh in on this, someone who could tell us what could actually be done on that front. I'm not sure what can be done, but it's obviously skewed.
100%.
The recent SCOTUS ruling that little district judges can't put nationwide injunctions in place was a start, but more definitely needs to be done. When we talk about sanctuary cities in Illinois, Chicago, the governor, Pritzker, was on Meet the Press, and he was railing about the gerrymandering that they want to do in Texas to pick up seats. This guy got called out on Meet the Press because his state is the most gerrymandered state in the nation. And he has the nerve to get on TV and rile against the Texans that are trying to get better representation for that state. It's unbelievable, the lack of just self-awareness.
But you know what? It's a great point, though. And go on. A person like Pritzker has zero self-awareness. And this shows you, again, we have lost cities and lost states. We really do. You look at Chicago, it's a lost city. You look at Illinois, it's a lost state. The fact that they have this person that's never had to work a day in his life, obviously he comes from the Pritzker billions, and he's like a demented Richie Rich. And it's like nobody calls him out on this crap. It's like what have you done, JD?
Look, for those of you who don't know, the Pritzker family, they own the Hyatt hotel chain. And, I know some of them, as full disclosure, because some of them are in the film industry. And yeah, they never had to work a day in their life. They get to do whatever they want. This one wanted to be a film producer. She's in. This one wanted to be a governor. No problem. And yeah, I think that when you have that kind of privilege, it's real easy to go on the news and just kind of scream into the wind, because you never knew what consequences were. You never knew what earning anything was. So it's, you want something, you throw your tantrum and you get it. That's what you're used to. Here, he threw his tantrum, and I think you're absolutely right. Nobody is pushing back. Look, that's not true. There are people that are online, people like us, who are bringing this stuff up. That Illinois ranks amongst one of the most gerrymandered states in the U.S. That is definitely something that has been brought up by us and by others, and I think that that's important. But I think that we can look at a lot of his policies, look at a lot of his comments, and see that same kind of hypocrisy coming up over and over and over again. And transparency is not something that he's used to in his personal life, and it translates into how he governs. And I think that we should be pushing back, and we should be pointing it out, because there are certain people who do not deserve to be in power. And I get that when you have enough money, you can buy yourself an election. But if you are not truly there to take care of your, whether it's state or city or whatever it happens to be, and the citizens within it, then you don't deserve to be there, no matter how much money you have and no matter how easily you can buy yourself a seat.
Men brought up the no cash bail thing, which is in theory. I understand there needed to be a bit of a correction. People that were smoking pot getting arrested and getting stuck in Rikers, and they get stuck there and they couldn't get out. But you had a shooter in New York City last week. The 17-year-old just started shooting, I believe, in Times Square. Man, his bail was set at $200,000. He's 17 years old. Maybe he won't be able to come up with that money. Maybe somebody will put up that money with one of their bail funds. How in God's name can you allow somebody that has shot up Times Square to be out on bail? I mean, I don't understand how nobody even this is not a 10-alarm fire if you live in the city or you live in the rest of the country. He went in with an automatic weapon and started shooting people up. I don't get how you get $200,000 bail. People have, I bring this up, Tom Barrack, who's now the ambassador with Turkey, when he had to pay a $250 million bail. Literally, he had to pay $250 million after in 2020, and he was proven innocent later on. How do you go from 250 for not registering to be a foreign agent to shooting people in Times Square? What the F is wrong with us?
Criminals are slipping through the cracks by design. Like, there, you can say, and yes, you're right, there are examples like those people who had a dime bag and what have you, and there are people who had a minor charge and couldn't scrape together the $500 fine. Okay, fine, I get that exceptions make sense. The idea behind it initially wasn't evil, and I think that it was also bipartisan in a lot of ways at that point. It has become something else. We have traded fairness for chaos, because the exceptions are minute. That's why they're called exceptions. And now we're doing it as this like paint with a broad brush, carte blanche kind of thing that really puts public safety in danger. And we're seeing it over and over and over again. Justice is either being delayed or it's being dismissed entirely. The example that you gave is an egregious example of this, but we're seeing that all the time. And in this case, this is not progressive. This is not reform. This is, like we talked about the other day, I'm going to use the same word. This is a boomerang, where we did a nice thing and it's coming back to smack us in the face right now.
Yeah, I don't know the exact case that you were talking about with that diplomat, but it sounds like for failing to register as a foreign agent.
Well, he's not a diplomat. Like, Tom Barrack is a Trump. He's an ambassador right now. He's been in Trump's orbit. I mean, he's been a close ally. He's a close friend of Ben Stein. I mean, he's one of the good guys. He's truly one of the good guys.
And for failing to register as a foreign agent, they gave him a bail of $250 million, whereas this kid that went and shot up Times Square got bail of $200,000, which is $20,000 that he has to put down, actually. And then they have funds that will put that money up. Yeah, it doesn't make sense. So, what it comes down to is it's not even the mayor of New York City. It's the city council. It's all of that stuff that's pushing this woke agenda that is destroying cities. And what people don't realize is that if you don't get out and vote up and down the ballot, all of your local municipal elections, then you're going to get people that have an agenda. And the people that have the agenda right now that are in office, their idea is that it's the Ibram X. Kendi, modern racism makes up for past racism. So if there's a black kid who goes into Times Square and shoots it up, let him off the hook, because that's just making up for past racism. That's their idea. And that's where it all stems from. And that's why you're seeing these asinine rules that really don't make sense. Like, why would you want to destroy your own city? But if you view it through the lens that these people view it through, which is a black kid today can do no wrong, and every single white person is automatically at fault for the transgressions of 1.3% of the population 150 years ago who owned slaves. It wasn't all the whites. It was just a tiny little fraction of the population that did it. And they think that every single white person today must pay for that crime of those people, what they did hundreds of years ago. It is insane.
But let's be real about something, and we all know this to be 100% true. It has nothing to do with that, okay? It has nothing to do with reparations or the sins of our past.
You mean in reality, it has nothing
in reality,
to do with
of
that.
course.
Yeah, but it is the same playbook that they used a bunch of times already. You brand the system as racist, you dismantle the system, then you act shocked when everything falls apart. And it's just an excuse, but you're right.
That's right. That's the point I'm making. They bring up these idiotic, insane things, and nothing happens with that, but that gets created from that. So it's never been about that. Just like I say, George Floyd and BLM had nothing to do with George Floyd. He was just an excuse to move the progressive movement even farther left by people like George Soros. Mend, I know you got to run in a second, but there's one story I wanted to bring up quickly before you got to go. A judge in New York, again, an Obama-appointed judge, decided Epstein files cannot be released. So this is like one of those things. You'll have people keep on saying Trump, 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 but it's another Obama appointee that's refusing to do it. So you had the Florida judge that refused to unseal the records. You have a New York judge that refuses to unseal the records. What do you do?
You know, this entire Epstein thing is very basic when you just look at the facts. The Democrats had the files for the last 4 years and did nothing with it, right? They prosecuted Ghislaine Maxwell, and that was it. No one else, no Johns, no, none of the perp walks for all the people that participated in that thing. And now that Trump's in office and he said he's going to release the files, you have the Democrats coming out trying to blame it on Trump. So you have one guy who claims that he's going to release the files and he's trying to. You have Democrats that could have done it for the last 4 years but haven't. And then you have Democrat elected judges that are blocking it. So I don't see how the fault falls on Trump. I don't see how anyone could be blaming Trump for not trying to release these files.
Because it's the same thing we were talking about earlier. They read the headline, they don't read the article. If you are designing something where Trump says, let's do it. Let's show everything we got to show. And then this anti-Trump judge, I'm assuming he's anti-Trump, okay, don't quote me, but I do know he's an Obama judge that has a political bent. If he is stopping the files from being released, and ultimately what it looks like is Trump is not able to show transparency, and that's the narrative, then that headline says, turns out Trump's not going to release these files. That's the headline. Then you read further, you find out why. You don't get to that detail. They read the headline, not the article. That's why.
But it's the same trick that they used with Charlottesville, when he said there's very fine people marching on both sides. And then right after that, he said, and I am not talking about the neo-Nazis because they should be utterly condemned. They just cut off that part and they go, oh, Trump said there's fine people on both sides. And that's it. That's the headline. It ran with it. They got me on that one until Scott Adams set me straight.
Well, you should have called me.
Yeah.
But I just want to say before you leave, his name, he's U.S. District Court Judge Paul Engelmeyer. And let's be honest, don't say he might hate Trump. He's a New York District Judge and appointed by Obama.
I'm just being careful of saying I haven't read anything that he said about it, but I think with everything laid out, there's an obvious thing to this, because what is the reasoning behind him not unsealing these files? The reasoning doesn't hold water, legally speaking, as far as I'm concerned, as someone who's not a lawyer.
He concluded that the government failed to make a compelling case for disclosure of the grand jury testimony, which typically remains sealed. And here's the thing about it, just as before Mend has to run, is this isn't a lawyer thing. No lawyer could understand what's actually going on. We could have 1,000 lawyers come onto the show. This is strictly their business. Okay. No matter what, this judge has the authority to do it. It's just like if you have tenure and you're a teacher, you can pretty much do whatever the hell you want and never get fired. The dude, we will see you tomorrow. Golan and I will continue. But I also want to remind people at this point, when you do download our shows, it is very helpful to put it on automatic download, follow us, subscribe, go to our YouTube channels, The Daily Cheat Sheet, also Substack, The Daily Cheat Sheet. Go everywhere, The Daily Cheat Sheet, and especially now Rumble. And we will be starting to do some live rumbling.
Okay, I am out. Thank you guys. Golan, you look good. The lighting this time of day looks fantastic on you, by the way.
I'm in my daughter's bedroom, so this is maybe where I should do it every time.
You look like a model. It's like the advertisement for Oliver People glasses or something right there.
I feel like one of those apps where men takes a picture and then it shows, this is what you'll look like in 30 years.
Okay,
See you, brother.
Have a great day, guys.
I just want to get back to the judge real quickly.
Yeah. Thank you. I had one more thing I wanted to say about that, which is, to me, this is the epitome of when they call DC the swamp. This is what they mean by it. Because this is one of those underhanded governmental political lawyer tricks. That's like one of the oldest tricks in the book. You hide behind precedent in order to either stop someone's agenda or make it look like they're not able to fulfill their agenda, or to protect whoever you want to protect. Whether the White House screwed up their initial PR run, they are doing their best to fix it now. They're really saying, let's go ahead and investigate this thing properly. We'll see. It may end up being nothing in the end, but he is promising that transparency, ordering the Epstein files to be unsealed. And this judge is literally saying, I wish I could let you tell the American people about what's going on, but the rules don't allow it, which feels very convenient. And I get that they're saying these narrow exceptions didn't meet them, all that. It's just lawyer speak for if we wanted to, we could find a way, but we don't want to. And to me, this is the epitome of the swamp at work.
And let me just clarify, because Trump is deploying the National Guard in the streets of DC, which, it's interesting because you always hear people talk about, I don't know if how familiar you are with the East Coast, or specifically like places like Jersey.
I used to live in Bushwick in New York, so you and I have that in common.
Yeah, but once you get into Jersey and people that are familiar with this and you get pulled over, I don't know about state troopers are very different than local police, right? So when you're speeding in Jersey or something and you all of a sudden you see this shiny light come out of the bushes if it's nighttime, and you're like, oh God. And they come to your door, they look like stormtroopers. Literally the way they're dressed, it's a frightening experience. But at the same time, it makes you think about not wanting to speed again. So I get it. Like, people always refer to the optics, or Bill Maher even, the National Guard and this and that. You know what? Who cares? What would you rather have?
If local leaders are freezing and not doing their jobs, you do what you have to do. If the mayor is going to fail on crime, then you send in federal officers. You send in the guard. You can, critics, like you mentioned, Bill Maher, like they call it authoritarian. But ultimately, what we're talking about is taking responsibility for your cities. We're not talking about, when people hear National Guard, what are they imagining? Tanks rolling down Pennsylvania Avenue? It's not that. These are smart deployments in specific criminal hotspots that protect our institutions and give local leaders. This is actually the funny thing. It's giving the local leaders a chance to clean up their own mess. It's saying, we're going to provide you with additional boots on the ground in-house for you to be able to actually focus your energy on fixing the problem that you guys screwed up. We're not just taking over and everyone's swept out of the way. We're adding people to this. And now, if he does ultimately take it over and say, I'm going to now utilize the people that are also local, then that's fine too, because what you're doing is you're taking the locals and the federal, and you're saying together, we're going to clean up the cesspool. It is a cesspool right now. And while people worry about militarizing the streets, ultimately, this is the National Guard. This is not the military. And they answer to the president.
Listen, I think that's brilliantly said. And this is where Bill Maher really is in a conundrum. I can't gauge with him sometimes if he still needs to do things to keep a certain amount of his supporters, because it doesn't line up with the rest of his thinking. When you critically think and you have a conscious stream of thought going, this really does not fit in with that thinking process. When you bitch about California, you bitch about the homeless, you bitch about the governor, You bitch about the high taxes and everything and all the potholes and every single thing, but you're not willing to take to the next step to say, what could we do about it? No, we do not want the National Guard in Washington, D.C. for the next 90 years. This is something to clean it up so then it could be taken over, and hopefully you put a new mayor in, but people's lives need saving. Plain and simple. Last
And no
thoughts on
one
that.
is suggesting that they're going to take it over forever. Look, the thing about Bill Maher, and again, I'm a fan of Bill Maher's, okay? The thing about Bill Maher, and I've noticed it over and over again, is that there is one thing that he can't get past. And even post his conversation and his dinner with Trump, and even him giving his kind of semi-mea culpa on the air and all of that, and he's been very clear about that he believes this, that he believes that Trump is performing a role and that he actually is very measured, et cetera. All of that, he still can't get past the fact that he feels, in his opinion, that Trump refused to leave the office and was trying to do a slow moving coup. That's something he can't get past. So no matter what happens, no matter what else he agrees with or disagrees with, that is one thing that he always comes down to. And every time he asks his Republican guests, he always asks, and do you support Trump? And when they say, yes, I do, he's like, so that's where we differ, because I can't support someone who wasn't going to leave office. That is the tripwire for him. He can't get past that. So for him, that particular front equals a political crisis, and nothing else is the same. So anything that seems even cosmetically authoritarian, he looks at that as another outreach of that other thing, a branch of that thing that he's obsessed with, and he can't see past it. So I think that's the disconnect. Everything else he says about most of the topics as he evolves is very much in line with a lot of the stuff that we talk about. And this one thing, he just cannot. It's a wall for him. He can't get past it.
It's an insane wall. It's not just a wall. It's one of those where I don't know have the wording for it. It's people that are so stuck on one thing they can't see the forest through the trees. They're just so stuck. But I want to go now to something I bring up constantly. So obviously Rupert Murdoch's Fox News, he owns the New York Post, and he owns the Wall Street Journal. And I've said to people for a long time, if you cycle through those three on a daily basis, there's always going to be a hit piece on President Trump. This is the New York Post today. A Trump-Putin peace deal would mean nothing without Ukraine at the table. Now, I don't know if that's true or not. I don't think the editorial section at the New York Post knows if this is true or not. I'm sure they said the same thing about tariffs. I'm sure that they said the same thing about everything else Donald Trump has done. But there's got to be a start. So you had Lindsey Graham yesterday, everybody's favorite Republican. And Lindsey Graham essentially said yesterday on Fox News, there's going to be a bit of a land grab. There's no doubt that there's going to be a bit of a land grab in any final peace decision that's made. Trump's whole business acumen is everybody's got to get a little bit of a win. And when the amount of soldiers and the amount of Russians that have died in this war, Vladimir Putin has to save a little bit of face. You have to give him a little bit of face saving, and Ukraine could actually build up an extremely strong economy after this. They could do everything they want that they haven't done. Let's be honest. Ukraine has been complicit in their own demise. Again, that means nothing with me thinking that Russia had any right to go and attack them, but they have a part in their own.
Just don't fully understand when people are complaining about this. And by the way, he called it a land swap. Okay, to his credit, not a land grab. Graham did in what he said. But yeah, it amounted to the same thing, ultimately. What he was talking about, Russia and Ukraine, and exchange some territory after Ukraine gets real security guarantees. That's how he put it. And I don't understand how anyone can complain about this, frankly. And I mean, whether it's Graham or anybody else, I don't get what they think the alternative is. We have basically a couple options. We have already had conversation upon conversation, diplomatic reach out to Putin over and over again. He's not stopping. Every time he says he's going to stop, he ramps it up. Every time he says there's a peace agreement, he launches new missiles. During the peace agreement, Trump needs to do something in order to basically make Putin say okay to something. Because simply asking him to stop the war, simply asking him to stop being a genocidal maniac who's trying to rebuild the USSR in its glory day is not working. None of those things are working. And territorial swaps are smarter realism. I don't know how else to put it. It's how Berlin stayed stable for decades, how the Koreas remained frozen in place. If it ends the invasion cycle, it's strategic stability. That just makes sense. How do you negotiate with someone who will just continue doing it over and over again. Ultimately, if the answer is no, what are we going to do? Go to war and put boots on the ground? And America gets involved because they said no to our request? It's not happening, because they know that if we are not constantly involved, and when I say we, I mean the West more broadly, they'll just keep doing it until someone gets bored. J.D. Vance tried to, until someone gets bored, and Ukraine will just get taken over. And so basically, the land grab might be the way to save face and the way to stop this thing from happening. I think it only makes sense to me.
And here's I got to be honest with you, and this probably I don't really care. You know my thoughts on Europe, and I don't mind Europe being invaded by any means. I sort of want them to be invaded. But they already have been invaded by Muslims. I wouldn't mind them getting a shock to their system, because I think that's exactly what Europe needs, is a shock to their system. And whether that's via the Muslim population or whether that's via Russia, I don't care. I got to be honest with you. I don't care at this point. Europe is so broken, minus a few places. For every Gert Wilder, there's 20 or 50 that are absolutely on the opposite mental end of the spectrum of just being insane. So if you're going to allow this, you didn't spend for years on NATO, you didn't spend for years on anything. You essentially allowed this to happen. Not my problem, right? Not in my neighborhood. You continue doing business with Russia. I don't care, Golan. I got to be honest. I don't care.
I understand. Look, I live in Europe, so I'm hoping that what you're saying does not come to pass, but let's kind of get real here. Europe is already being hit every damn day by jihadi attacks. It's not getting the airtime. People aren't even aware of this, by the way. I happen to be aware of it because I'm hyper aware of it as an Israeli, as a Jew who wears a star around his neck on a regular basis and often emblazons it on his chest and T-shirts and all the rest. I'm very, very out there. But according to the report, the last report from 2024, the attacks went up from 14 to 24, and then in 2025 it exponentially jumped once again into over 100. And we're talking about everything from knife stabbings and vehicle rammings and people who were indoctrinated online and all the rest. It's a daily nightmare now. And there were a bunch happening in Germany. Go look online right now. How many cars rammed into groups of people by Muslims in Germany? In Ireland, a 16-year-old just stabbed a chaplain. He was radicalized online. The first jihadi attack on Irish soil. And those people just love to lick the taint of all the Palestinian people. So I think at this point, we're past the I hope it doesn't happen thing. It's happening. The question will be, how long will it take until they realize they're being taken over without a shot being fired, which is something that the jihadis themselves talk about openly on a regular basis. So it's not like I'm having to read between the lines. There was just a video not long ago talking about how some of these kids are as young as 12 years old being radicalized online and their lives being derailed by extremist propaganda fueled by global conflict, toxic social media, all of that. So I think you're right that they need a wake-up call. I hope it's not anything too severe, since, again, I am in Spain, a place that isn't going in the right direction a lot of the time. But to me, I think this kind of deal makes sense. And it's time for everyone to just shut up and realize this one needs to end. And let's wrap it up and have Trump do what he said he was going to do. He's doing his best, and people are throwing up roadblocks on a regular basis. I think enough is enough. He's saying, let's do these land swaps. Let's do what is necessary to end this war. And if that war is ended, then we can deal with how we punish Russia or whether we punish Russia or whatever happens after the. Right now, it needs to stop because people are dying every single day.
Listen, I think you said that perfectly. I don't think there's really anything more to talk about or say about that. I want to move on, though, to our last thing of the day, which obviously is Israel. Now, as we've constantly discussed the propaganda war, and Bibi Netanyahu held a press conference yesterday, but this is just a perfect example. So Hamas claims that an Al Jazeera reporter was murdered by IDF soldiers. We know this to be completely false. We know they were killed, but the same reporter worked for Hamas, and they have actual documentation on that. And I've never witnessed a war where on a daily basis, the country has to show documentation of every single act they do or didn't do. And the reward for the invaders is getting their own state. It's one of the most disgusting, appalling things I've ever witnessed, that Bibi Netanyahu has to hold a press conference and showed the New York Times fake story, the Time Magazine fake story of the photos, every fake story. And he's got to do this. And it doesn't matter. It really, at this point, it doesn't matter, Golan. There's nothing Israel could do to win this propaganda war. They've lost the propaganda war. We just have to be completely honest about it. I don't know if the tides ever change. I don't know what can do to change it, but the idea of a Palestinian state is absolutely ridiculous. Israel will never allow it. It's basically like saying, well, let's turn anything into a state. You can't just do that, or a country. You can't just do that. And it's not their land. Israel will never allow it. And yeah, that's just my humble opinion.
You know, this is you're talking about what's the reporter's name? Anas al-Sharif, right? Who is the Al Jazeera reporter you're talking about? This is a guy who there is ample evidence was first of all, I'm gonna put aside for a moment that he was part of Hamas. When you start looking at his social media posts where he's praising all the murderers, praising all the rapists, saying God is good for all the children that had their arms cut off and the babies that were beheaded, right away you know this wasn't a good guy and probably wasn't a journalist that was really looking at both sides of the equation and making sure that he was impartial, right? So number one. Number two, we have credible evidence that he was actually part of Hamas. He was listed in the Hamas registry as part of a brigade that actually was the brigade that started the October 7th massacre. Shockity shock shock. Beyond that, we have pictures of him with Yahya Sinwar doing selfies, hugs and love and all the rest. This is a guy who was deeply, deeply embedded within Hamas, not just as an observer, as someone who, again, they listed in their ranks as one of their terrorists. And so why is that being ignored? If you right now, and I did this yesterday because I saw it, I had a moment to myself. I went on ChatGPT and looked up, because I knew there was a list of evidence. I had seen someone do a social media post about Anas al-Sharif, but I don't trust everything I see on social media. So I like to do a deeper dive. So I started off with the simplest version, ChatGPT, and then eventually I would look at other things, and I did. But I started off with ChatGPT, and I said, what is the evidence that Anas al-Sharif is part of Hamas? I'm going to read you the answer it gave. I wasn't able to find any credible or verifiable evidence via reputable news sources, official statements, or investigative reporting that Anas al-Sharif, the Al Jazeera reporter killed near Al-Shifa Hospital on October 10, 2025, was affiliated with Hamas. And then they say, here's what we know from reliable sources. And they list the Indian Express, First Post, Al Jazeera, and others. This is how, by the way, you see the weaponization of information happening. And I just want to point this out for all of our listeners. If you are getting your information from social media or you are getting your information from ChatGPT, it is the same thing because it scrapes information from the internet. This is not a thinking machine. Even the new ChatGPT 5, which supposedly does double evidence checking and all of that, and takes a little longer to give you an answer because it's checking its work, still is scraping specific sources. And I mentioned this now a couple of months ago on the show because I saw it coming. When you ask, and you can ask, what are your sources and how do you rank them? It tells you Al Jazeera, 5 out of 5 stars, no problem. This is totally trustworthy. Why? Because it seems like everything they say is, and they give you 1,000 reasons why it makes sense. They say The Guardian, 5 out of 5, totally trustworthy. Why? Because it's not financed by a government. It's financed by donations, and therefore it can't be corrupt, which is ridiculous.
Like Wikipedia.
Like Wikipedia. Oh, Wikipedia, the worst of all the worst, by the way, that there has now been a total expose that showed how taken over that place has been by jihadis. If you go read anything about this conflict, you will find and look at the dates that things have been changed and the names of the editors, and you will see a repeat over and over again, the same editors, because what they've done is they've changed history by changing Wikipedia. What is the number one site that ChatGPT scrapes when getting information for you? Wikipedia. When you look at all of that, and then you say Times of Israel, which is a truly nonpartisan source, despite the fact that it's out of Israel, they also criticize Israel as much as they don't criticize it, as much as they praise it. And they say, this gets a 3 out of 5. Why? Because they often have headlines that repeat what the government says, as if the government can never tell you anything true. So if they repeat the Jews, forget that one. They get two points taken off. So all of this is to say, don't trust where you're getting your information until you verify yourself. And as if that's not enough for you to go by, Anas al-Sharif, the guy who was the reporter for Al Jazeera, turned out to be a Hamas operative. And when he was killed, it was a good thing. And I hope they all get wiped out, because we use terms like journalist and UN worker and UNRWA worker and NGO volunteer and all the rest very loosely.
Well said, as always. And Gert Wilders came out this morning, and I love this dude. He said, "Well, good morning to you. Well, good morning to you too. Sick Islamists never stop. Neither will I." And I just love this guy. And I'm realizing there's this crazy trend that's sort of frightening going on. Is there is a difference between Islam and Islamic people and the brutality they commit than any free nation in almost any free nation in the almost any nation in the West. I mean, this is just not a debatable issue. The fact that people are covering for Hamas in America, the people that it's such a deeper thing, and I constantly will say this, there's such an anti-Semitic trope to this. There's such an anti-Semitic feel to this. It can't be explained in any other way. If you are in any way defending Hamas or criticizing Israel's actions, you have lost your fucking mind. Okay, I will say it as simply as that. If you support Hamas or don't speak up against radical Islam, but speak up against Israel, you have fucking lost your mind. How much more data do you need? How much more evidence do you need? The Islamic religion does not fit in with Western values. They share nothing. They absolutely share nothing. They just want to come, take, eat, pillage, murder, rampage, and suck it up. It's like no different than a dystopian horror movie that War of the Worlds, whatever it is. That's their sole job in life, is to come here and suck out all the oxygen. There has been zero enlightenment period for these people. So to anybody that ever wants to make this, and now you have the PM of Australia that wants to make a Palestinian state, go to hell, you jackass. You have no idea what you're talking about. Worry about your own people. And for people that know, Australia had the most draconian rules during COVID. This is a serious police state. You're not allowed to have guns over there. And there's actual data of showing how much, when they took away the guns, how much sexual assault actually went up after this. So if you want to be, if there are people, even in the Republican Party, which are very few, that you believe in this cause, you're out of your damn mind. You
Look,
side with.
I want to add something to that.
Yeah, please.
Because I will add two other categories. I think I'm going to try and be as fair as possible. Right? So there are people who are genuinely hateful. They didn't lose their mind. They're just bad, evil people who want to vilify the Jews. And the easiest way to do that is by pretending they're not anti-Semitic and using this new buzzword of anti-Zionism, something that was started under the Russia hoax, the elders of Zion, when they were saying, oh, if you say this, then no one can accuse you of being anti-Jewish. So that's one. You can be evil and not having lost your mind. So there is that. There is also a gullible factor. And part of that is something I used to say when I was in the army. I remember at one point we saw documentation that in the Palestine, and by the way, you read about it now, you can read about it. I was in the army in 1994 to 1997. It's been a very, very long time since then. And already back then, we were seeing this, which was the textbooks that were being taught to the Palestinian children. UN, by the way, funded textbooks would say that Israelis and Jews more specifically, Yehud, even though a lot of the media now lie, like the BBC, they lie whenever they say Yehud, they translate it to Israeli. That is a lie. It means Jew. So the Jews like to eat Palestinian baby meat. I will never forget seeing this in a textbook, and they had a picture of a can, like a Campbell's soup can, but with a baby on it, and said Palestinian baby meat. And so to show you that these people are vampires, they are evil, they are monsters. So if you grow up with that from day one, you are truly indoctrinated. And if you are that, then I can't say you've lost your mind, because if you know that someone is the devil your entire life, it's
well,
like
I'm not
being
referring to them.
No, I know you're
not.
not. I know you're
Right.
not. I'm not saying you are.
This is like the Chris Rock joke. Remember when he said, which one was it? The guy that got eaten by the tiger, Siegfried or Roy, I can never remember. And he's like, afterwards, he's like, the tiger went crazy. Everybody's like, the tiger went crazy. And he's like, tiger didn't go crazy. The tiger went tiger.
Yeah.
This is what they're the tiger. They're not going crazy. They're just going tiger. This has been their lifestyle. This is not a new thing go on. This is just who they are.
So let's put those two categories aside, evil and indoctrinated. Everybody else is either willfully stupid or they have lost their mind, because you have to excuse all of history to believe some of this stuff. If you look at the formerly non-Muslim countries that are now Muslim majority, you are talking about Spain and Sicily and the Balkans and all of North Africa, which is Egypt and Libya and Tunisia and Algeria and Morocco and Sudan and Somalia and Mauritania and Niger, and Iran was Persia. Persia was Zoroastrian. Iraq and Syria and Jordan, Palestine, even Palestine, by the way, Palestine was Jewish. Go watch my episode of Jew Can't Handle the Truth, where I talk about the myth of the Palestinians. That's the title, where I give you a long list of all of the places that were called Palestine that were Jewish places. Jerusalem Post used to be called the Palestine Post. Lebanon, Turkey, Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan. I can go on and on and on and on and on. I think it's 56. I don't know. Don't quote me on that, but I believe it's 56 countries that had been conquered and colonized by the Muslims. And people like to say, but they let you live as a dhimmi. I don't even count that, because the dhimmi was as long as you could pay your taxes, and they could treat you like a seventh-class citizen until you ran out of money, and then they cut your head off. Or you converted to Islam, which is why all of them converted to Islam. So when you look at all of that, we're not even talking about ancient history, by the way. Some of this happened within our lifetime. Some of this stuff is happening right now.
That's what I was about to say.
Christians being burned alive. Go ahead.
No, your point. I was just going to say, you don't have to look at history. Just look at the present, which people are not looking at. They're not looking at the Christians that are being slaughtered. They're not looking at what's going on in the Congo. They're not looking at what's going on in the Sudan. And this is the hypocrisy of everything. It's amazing that George Clooney's biggest grift of caring was always years about the Sudan. He marries this Arab chick who's got connections with the Muslim Brotherhood, and all of a sudden she's the lawyer for the UN and all this stuff, and the Sudan isn't in the news anymore. I always say it's amazing what President Trump got off the news. It's amazing. He got Scientology, the Sudan, everything that mattered in 2016 no longer exists. Those ills of the world go on, no longer exist. The only ill of the world is Israel, and that's what's being portrayed not as the cure, not as the only thing that's really standing in between this happening in every other country. If we allow a Palestinian state to happen, you will witness a new age of terrorism that will make the 70s airline hijackings look like a candy store.
100%. We have seen it over and over and over again. None of these people come in and then try to govern and make it someplace that's like really democratic or lovely or whatever else. Better people than me have said Gaza could have been Singapore, and instead they turned it into a terrorist funhouse. And this is the same thing they do all over the place. The only difference is there, they knew they would eventually do an October 7th, take a bunch of hostages in, and all the tunnels and everything else that they designed under all the kindergartens and mosques and hospitals and schools were going to eventually be really useful to them. But in other places, they don't bother to dig tunnels. They just go in. What they're doing to the Druze, for instance, right now in Syria, is the same thing. There was a news story recently about a little Druze girl that just got kidnapped after her entire family was slaughtered by these monsters. And just like has happened over and over again, she is going to be a sex slave. Remember not long ago in Gaza, Israel just rescued a girl that had been taken into sexual slavery by the Islamists, sold to Hamas, and she'd been there for 10 years. She'd been kidnapped at 6 years old. She was found at 16. This happening all over the world, and people just ignore it. And my new, I will just point out, this is not a plug, but it's important to hear that the new episode, it's always a plug for me. What can I say? I'm a marketer as well as a producer. The new episode of Jew Can't Handle the Truth is almost finished. The script is almost finished. And the name of the episode is Every Islamist Accusation is a Confession. And I go through one by one every accusation that they make, from raping to Nakba and everything in between, and show historically how it's all stuff they've done. In order to believe the stuff that you are believing now, all of you who have lost your mind or who are incredibly stupid or gullible, you have to ignore all reality and believe whatever it is that's being fed to you by a skewed media and by Hamas directly, because they put it under some euphemism that makes you feel like, well, this is a source I can trust, like the UN or Amnesty International or Human Rights Watch or any of these others. They're all the same. They're all just different arms of the same organization.
Brilliantly said. And I'll just close it up like this, and I'll just say this to people. So there are 2 million, and I don't know why they don't use this constantly, because it's probably the best talking point that Israel could actually have. And it's this: there are 2 million Arab Israelis that live in Israel peacefully. Name me an other country that would be invaded by an Arab country, by an Arab people, and still allow 2 million to be citizens. I bring it back to Japan, right? When we had internment camps. That was a very noble thing that we did, the internment camps, because every other country would have murdered every other Japanese person in their country. Israel's not doing that. Israel hasn't sent the 2 million people out because how do you know you could trust them? They haven't done that. They've allowed them to live there in peace and harmony. And Golan, that is the most telling thing of who Israel is. You're going to tell me Russia would have done that? You're going to tell me even us, we wouldn't do that. We would literally be going door to door, checking people's status, their social media, every single thing we would be checking. Israel hasn't done that.
We have to be, look, and I agree with you, and I'm trying to be pragmatic here. We have to be careful about painting everybody with the same brush. I know some wonderful Arabs that don't feel that way. I recorded a video not long ago. I'll post it on our Instagram and maybe on our YouTube as well, where I say this is a message to all the Muslims. Time for you to speak up and prove to us that you don't approve of all of this. And I haven't heard anybody do that really, without caveats and excuses.
Golan, that's my point, though, is the Arab Israelis they do speak up, and many of them have said this is our homeland, this is our country, this is where we've been born. But shine a light on them, because
I totally agree.
Because they're the success stories.
You're also talking about people who vote in parliament, who sit on the Supreme Court, who run hospitals. You know, they form political parties. They all have the same voting rights as anybody else who lives there. And they like to say the people who live in a territory run by another government, right? The Palestinian Authority runs the West Bank. Gaza is run by Hamas. Those places are separate places with their own government. Now, do we also have some security there? Yeah, because they keep trying to murder everybody. So we're doing that, but they have their own government. Why would I allow another territory who has their own government to also have voting rights in my government? It doesn't even make sense unless you lie about it. And that's why people fall for it. Constant lies.
Well said, and we will end it there. I bring this up, and we bring up a lot of things so people have talking points. So people could get beyond the chat GPT, beyond their X feed, beyond all the propaganda that's being spilled online. And somebody could say, oh, well, you're propaganda. Well, we're not. We're not getting paid by anybody. We do this for fun and for free. We actually do deep dives into this. A lot of us have lived abroad. And you know what, Golan, there's a difference between visiting a place and knowing a place. And this is why Marco Rubio is such an amazing Secretary of State, is because he just doesn't go to places. He understands the history of those places. And this is such a problem we have with America, is our knowledge of history, our knowledge of foreign politics, our knowledge of so much. And I'm not knocking on America, but our school system does suck. I think we could all admit that. And forget about people being able to read and write. You think they're going to be able to understand these concepts? They're not. It takes a long time and a lot of studying to understand this. So that's why we bring it up, to help you have talking points, because there's a lot of crazy people out there that are spewing some of the most hatred, vitriolic things I have witnessed in my lifetime. And I hope we can help you, whether they be influencers, other podcasters, or just our fans on truth, know how to speak to people and know how to give critical answers in these critical times.
Yeah, and look no further, by the way, I just want to give Rubio an extra shout out. I don't remember which reporter it was, but I do remember he was being interviewed on some network, probably CNN or something like that. And they were like, well, isn't this the same as World War II? And without skipping a beat, he was able to go through the history of how the Holocaust started, how World War II unfolded, and basically destroy her entire argument, which if you didn't know your history, if you didn't actually understand the steps that it took to get to something as historically atrocious as the Holocaust, you wouldn't have been able to defend. You would have been like, well, it doesn't seem right. But he was able to actually break it down into brass tacks and completely shut down the whole conversation. To me, that is what we all need to be doing. Now, I'm not asking everyone to suddenly become a scholar, and I'm not asking everyone to suddenly go study every primary source you can imagine. But that when it comes to just being vomited stuff by social media or by a media that clearly at this point, if you don't realize that the media is there for clicks, views, likes, and ad revenue, then you don't realize that you are the tool being used by a media that is no longer really media. It is just another arm of propaganda.
Perfect. On that note, I want to thank everybody that's been downloading our show on Apple, Spotify. Again, I say that we're on Rumble. Go to our Rumble. It's the Daily Cheat Sheet. Golan has been pleasantly surprised that we've gotten a few views. You can find us on YouTube at the Daily Cheat Sheet. You can find us on Substack at the Daily Cheat Sheet. And Substack's another great place where it's harder to bury and shadow ban people. You can find us on Truth. You can find us on X at TG Cheat Sheet, Instagram at the Daily Cheat Sheet. And you can find us all over. And don't forget to give us that 5-star review and turn on that automatic download. I want to wish everybody a good morning, afternoon, and night world, wherever you are. God bless you all.